Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I bid to Dr. Irene Aina Bahari and to my fellow classmates. I hope everyone is in the pink of health and is doing fine. Hi, my name is Syarah Hafizi Ryan bin Zainuddin and my matrix card number is D2019108797. In this video, I will be talking about my reflection on my teaching video based on the COPRA model. COPRA model consists of 6 steps, which is cognition, practice, observation, rationalization, action, and critical reflection. So, for my teaching video, I created a lesson in which I taught my student noun. My class consists of 5 Form 2 students and the duration of the teaching session is around 20 minutes. I recorded the teaching video of me teaching 5 of my students through Google Meet. The proficiency level of my students are mixed, B1 to C1, which is intermediate advanced. The skill that I focused on for my teaching was listening and speaking. So I will talk briefly about what my lesson is all about. My lesson is a grammar-based lesson, which is noun, and for this lesson, it is partially teacher-centered and student-centered. As I did most of the talking, but at the same time, I give the opportunity to my students to answer the question and justify their answer. I decided to taught them noun because noun is a basic and simple thing that they can learn in the English classroom. In this lesson, I started off by explaining to them what is noun, which noun begin with capital letter, singular and plural nouns, countable and uncountable noun, and in between the topic, I did a clarification check with my students by asking them some questions. In the end of the lesson, I gave a set of questions to my students in which I presented it on the slide, and I will ask them to choose the correct answer for each question. Then I end the lesson by asking them what they have learned and did they enjoy the class. Anyway, for this lesson, I have prepared a slide with a lot of interesting visual aids and notes that they can jot down. Here are some examples of the slide that I have prepared for the lesson. And here are some examples of the question that I show to my student in between lecture for clarification check. Lastly, here are the examples of the question that I gave at the end of the lecture to test their comprehension, and this is basically the class activity.
By creating an imaginary picture. Usually it's something that moves.
So all of these are in the slide, which is the lecture slide and the slide for the questionnaire. For the next step, which is the observation, most of my students are able to explain to me about noun. When I ask them the question, for example, at the beginning of the lesson, I asked Daim to re-explain what is noun, and he is able to answer me back. At the end of the lesson, they manage to answer the question correctly, and when I ask them why they think their answer is correct or to justify their answer, they manage to explain why too. In order to test their comprehension, I call out their name to answer the question, and it seemed like they are confident to share their answer, even though at one point one of my students, which is Rochelle, couldn't answer one question. That happened in minute 13.12 in the video. Overall, they are all very engaged with the lesson and provided a satisfying response when I asked them questions. For the next step, which is the rationalization, there are a few to talk here. First and foremost, I gave a clear explanation regarding nouns, and my student seems to understand everything that I have taught. This is because I integrated clarification check with my student, and they managed to answer it correctly. The students seem to be engaged with the classroom. For example, when I asked Daim which picture of the plate with apple on it is singular and plural, and he successfully answered the question and clarified why he chose that answer. As you can see in my teaching video, there is no material provided by me. Perhaps I should provide a material such as a formative assessment to my students. As for this lesson, I only show them a slide that consists of questionnaire. Or maybe I can conduct a classroom activity like nouns activity, so that the student can discuss among themselves and whatnot. Moving on to the next step, which is action. I believe that I should support my lecture with more attractive visual aid. I did show them attractive visual aid, but it is not enough in my opinion. By providing more attractive visual aids, I believe the student will understand the lesson much better, apart from making the lesson more engaging and fun. Hence, the effectiveness and the lesson will be more successful, and the learning objective will be achieved as well. The next thing that I should do is, rather than asking them question or showing them question on the slide, maybe I should provide them a formative assessment, because all I did was showing them questionnaire at the end of the lesson. In addition to that, the student only get to answer the question when I call out their name. So I do not really know how much have they learned or how much information have they absorbed. Yes, they do answer most of the question correctly, but it would be better to be more specific in terms of seeing how much they have learned. So by providing formative assessment to them, I can detect their level of comprehension during that lesson and see how much have they learned. Other than that, during my lesson, there is no pair or group work going on. It is all individual. At some point, the student might feel boring for not having the opportunity to work with their peers, because maybe they can discuss more regarding the topic. So maybe I should create an activity in which the students are required to work as a group or in pairs. Hence, they can discuss among themselves regarding the lesson, and this will create a good interaction among them. Other than that, students who are highly proficient will also be able to help their friends who are not very proficient in understanding the lesson too. So there we can see that group work or pair work is also important. So I have shared a lot, and now I will be talking about my critical reflection. After analyzing my teaching video, I noticed that the students should do certain tasks or learning by themselves. and this raises some struggle with my belief system, which is teacher is a facilitator. Back during my school day, when there is still no internet based learning or whatnot, my teacher would usually facilitate the lesson from A to Z. I would usually do what the teacher asked me to do, and I really work as a team with my peers. I found out that this way helped me to learn by following the teacher pace, and I enjoy it. However, today I did the same thing too, where I will facilitate my students all the way when I am teaching them. Therefore, I think that the purpose of my teacher doing this is to make sure that the student is on the right track and it didn't confuse them on what they are learning as well. This method will also make the learning session more organized and manageable. However, as the time changed, I believe that the lesson should be more of a 21st century lesson where technology, group or pair discussions, student-centered lesson, internet and more should be incorporated in the lesson to make it more engaging, fun, better and up to date. Apart from that, this will also help the student to be more creative, confident and vocal or outspoken, where they can share what they have in mind. So indirectly, this will shape students into someone that is skillful. From what I can see in my teaching video, I didn't do what I just said, which is group or pair work, formative assessment and more. But there is always room for some improvement, and I will surely incorporate those things in my next lesson. Another thing that I wanted to say is that not all students are able to speak in class confidently. It's a good thing that some of my students are able to be confident in the class. I mean, most of them are, but not all of them can do it. Two of my students, which is Aiman and Rochelle, had some little hard time to answer my question, and they speak softly too, which it indicates that they might feel shy. Hence, this will give me a hard time to see whether they really understand the lesson or not. So I ought to provide a formative assessment to my student so that it will be easier for me to score them and see how much have they learned from my lesson. As a teacher, I should understand that students are not the same. They have their own level of proficiency, confidence, and personality. So I cannot expect them to be outspoken most of the time, even though I will teach them to be more confident. But it's a part of a learning processes, so I should take it slow and give them some time to develop the confidence to speak in the class. So that is all from me. Thank you and have a nice day.